Hi, this is Gerd Leonhard, Futurist and CEO of the Futures Agency. Today having a conversation about digital transformation of travel and tourism. With me is Simon Torrance and Rohit Talwar, both futurists from London. The top issue in travel we discussed earlier for all of us really means the discussion about big data and what it does to the travel business. So who wants to take the ball here?
Well, shall I kick off? Yeah, so big data, it's a very big topic, of course, but in theory, because we all carry around mobile phones in our pocket, and we're moving the whole time, we're in cars or transportation and so on, in theory, we could create a huge sensor network which says where everybody's going, can even predict where they're likely to go, and could manage things like traffic flows and predict outbreaks of diseases in some emerging markets and all kinds of interesting things. So I think that's a great opportunity, or a massive opportunity for the travel and transport industry to leverage big data.
I agree, and I think that there's huge potential in terms of the data that's already there. From what I looked for when I made my booking, what I searched on, the information I provided at booking, what I did on my flight, what I do in my hotel, what I do in the destination, all of that is data. It's all disaggregated at the moment. The potential exists to start to pull that data together and start to really personalise offers to the traveller, and also to generate what the industry is desperate for, which it calls ancillary revenues, which is to start to say, actually, look, while you were in this destination, you bought this particular perfume, let's keep offering you that perfume when you get home because we know you like to buy it. That kind of thing really starts to open up the potential to deepen your relationship with the customer and make more money out of them.
Isn't that kind of like what you see LinkedIn, for example, doing now in the human resources and hiring and firing part of the world? Is they've become the OS for HR or so, right? So could Amadeus, for example, the travel organization company, could they become, based on big data, that sort of OS for this kind of smartness? And what would it do for people? I mean, this is a fact I look at, when I look at algorithm-based service like TripAdvisor, so I can say, it's kind of interesting, but it's not real, in my view.
I think the problem that some of the big players have, and I'm not going to name the brands, but people who try and be the universal platform providers, they can't move as quickly as the underlying brands. You have millions of brands in travel. So you're already seeing people like Emirates saying, actually, we're going to go it alone in terms of the development of our systems, largely speaking, because we can move faster, we can bring in new technologies, we can do what we want when we want, rather than relying on a big platform provider. The challenge for the big guys is to say, how do we get to be fleet of foot and bring to market technologies that you're hearing about today within your time frame of action, rather than saying, well, we'll bring that into our product portfolio in 2 years' time. That's a real challenge, I think, for a lot of travel companies, that the providers just aren't moving.
But isn't it a lot like, the challenge I see with some of that stuff like Emirates and others is sort of garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, you have all this dirty data, and then you throw it together and you have this fake algorithm like Cloud or Peer Index and so, and it couples together some sort of read, and it's basically just make-believe from A to Z, right? Because it's interesting, it's like a game, but it's not actually correct, right? Because it creates a reality of saying this is the data and that's what you see, but it's actually just a subsection of all the data that's quite dirty. So far.
Yeah, the most valuable data is all the information from the phone companies, because that's location data. It's data about who I've been connecting with and so on, and it's got a lot of information about my creditworthiness and so on. So all that information that the telcos have is really valuable. Now, it's all in its own silos as well, but increasingly you're starting to see that being aggregated. So in the UK here, there's a joint venture between the operators to aggregate data and make that available to other industries who can innovate on top of it. So once you start to get data that can talk to each other, and then you can make it available to others, people can start to mash it together with other types of data and do interesting things.
We mentioned artificial intelligence, and smart digital assistants and those kind of things earlier in the conversation. I think in the travel business, it's a huge opportunity to create sort of software agents that can collate and correlate and make sense out of it, because it's very complex stuff. For example, in TripAdvisor, it's a great example, because if you send 50 people from Manchester to eat Indian food in Barcelona, you will get completely different responses than the Barcelona people eating the same Indian food, just because they're different people. Right? And that really skews the whole picture. So how would you deal with that? I mean, how would you make actual sense rather than sort of just visual noise out of this, right?
Well, one of the things that everyone working with big data learns very quickly is that just looking at the data with people who know about data isn't the full picture. You need to bring social scientists, anthropologists, and all sorts of other people to look at your data who can wrap social insight around what the data is telling you to draw out meaningful pictures. And you're starting to see that happening a little bit in travel, in the airline industry. Everyone's gradually waking up to smarter and smarter interrogation of their data. It will come. It's not going to happen so quickly that we're all going to be astounded by it, but I think you'll see in the next few years a much deeper use of data to manage the businesses in travel.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's this idea of sensors everywhere, because you have a sensor in your phone, and you have sensors on all vehicles, and you have sensors around the city. You're starting to people like GE who make the turbine engines for their aeroplanes. They put 20 sensors in there, and they start to sell the data from that, coming out of those sensors, mashing it up with the air traffic control systems to more accurately predict when a plane is likely to land. And a couple of minutes here or there is worth millions in that industry.
Good point.
So you then think, well, how can you make more data available? And you have this lovely dichotomy between Waze, which is the social network for traffic management, and then the traditional linear approach, which is like Navtech originally from Nokia, was to put lots of sensors all over the city. But of course, it's if you can leverage what everybody's got, the crowd, then you can do far more innovative things than if you just try and build things yourself. So I think part of it is to think creatively, is how can we get data from multiple sources without having to invest in lots of complex infrastructure?
Good point. Let's wrap up here. One recommendation for a big player in the travel business, as far as the use of data is concerned. Let's give one recommendation. Right? And I think I'll start this one so that we can have the wrap at the end there. I think the most important thing about big data to me is to find a way to create smartness in that data. Apart from collecting it, find a way to create new interrelations, but also to use external APIs to compare with other data. Because when data scales very large and very connected, it becomes very powerful. Until then, it's inconclusive. Right? So, being on the no-fly list in the US doesn't mean you're a terrorist. It just means somebody put a flag on you. Right? So that's what I would focus on, to create the smartness in the system, and that takes a lot more than, as you said, not just data scientists.
I would talk to your customers. I'd start to understand what it is that they would like you to do for them or make possible with the information they're giving you. Customers are now very willing to talk about the kind of services and value they'd like to receive from you. And if you start with that external stimulus, it gives you much more of a focus in then being able to look at your own data. And I think we need to drop the term big data because people get scared of it. Just start talking about my data. How do I use my data in smarter ways to serve my customer?
Yeah. I think they can do it. So travel companies or airlines can do a lot more. They know you're on a plane, you're going somewhere, you're a captive audience. They offer you a hotel room and maybe a car at the moment. But what else could they offer? Particularly digital services. They could offer you use of a phone or a SIM. They could offer you insurance for the 3 days where you're going somewhere. All kinds of other things. So be more creative about how to use digital technologies to serve your customers, as you say.
Great. Thanks very much. This was a discussion about the digital transformation of travel and tourism. Simon Torrance, Rohit Talwar, and Gerd Leonhard. You can find more information on our website, thefuturisagency.com. Thanks for tuning in.